And welcome to the Decatur Dish on Atlanta News First Plus. I am Maria Moreau, joined by the one and only Dan Wisenhunt with our media partners at Decatur-ish. And we have had a news-filled week over the past 7 days, and that continues for us here in DeKalb County. We're going to get you into some of your top headlines, but Dan, there's a story you all are following right now.
Yes, there is a water main break happening in Brookhaven near DeKalb Peachtree Airport. It's on Claremont, near Dresden Drive. It's a big deal. It's a 30-inch main, which means there's a lot of water flowing through it, which means it's affecting water pressure around the county. Beacon Hill Middle School in Decatur is experiencing low water pressure. Some other areas are as well. They are still working on that, last I checked. Don't know what caused it. Don't know when it will be repaired, but we will post the latest over on Decatorish.com, and our partners at Atlanta News First will post the latest when they get it as well.
We have a lot of news headlines to get into, but Dan, before we jump into some of the need-to-knows, I wanted to talk about this weekend. Atlanta saw snow in a rare event, some communities even seeing up to 5.8 inches, I believe Druid Hills reported, and I have never seen residents take advantage of severe weather like this. I mean, people were out skiing, tubing, building snowmen. It was quite a sight for us here at the station as we were covering it.
People in the South are real cute about the snow. They don't see it a whole lot, so when they get it, it's always pretty neat. They usually close everything because Atlantans can't be trusted with snow, as we all learned during Snowmageddon. So school is out Friday. All the kids were running around. They had to run at the streets because nobody was driving. Snowball fights were had. Snowmen were built. It was a fun time. And then, of course, we woke up Saturday and the snow was still there, except it was frozen rock solid overnight. So Saturday after the snow day kind of reminded me a little bit of a COVID stay-at-home day, but without the existential dread of COVID. So that was nice. Saturday was a great day to catch up on projects at home, put some puzzles together, play some video games, what have you. Dean Hess, our photographer, went out and took some great photos. He sent his drone over some houses and took some photos of people frolicking in the neighborhood. It was a good time. It was nice to be able to slow down a little bit and just enjoy something as simple as snow, which we don't see all that much here.
Yeah, and it was so important to get residents prepared for the road conditions and the temperatures, but also capture some of the fun that was had because, I mean, this doesn't happen every day for us. And people here, I think I heard from some comments up north that the South does snow days like no other. So
we do. We my family was up at 7 a.m. like it was Christmas morning all over again because the snow had fallen and it had kept falling, and then there's a little bit of sleet, and we walked around the neighborhood for a little bit, what parts we could walk around because it was getting really slick because the ice was freezing. But it was a nice change of pace, I would say that. So happy that it happened.
Well, hey, speaking of some changes, let's talk about King of Pops, a popular business around here, definitely bringing the holiday feeling year-round, now selling parts of their business in an effort to expand. Talk to me about that.
King of Pops started its own distribution company a while back to get some of their products in the local stores. They sold off that part of its business to a group called Rainforest Distribution, which has access to markets all over the East Coast, about 22 markets in all. And people outside of the southern markets are going to start seeing King of Pops products on their shelves. It's a very smart business move by Steve Carson, them over at King of Pops. They've been running a successful business for a while. If you've ever been to a festival here in Atlanta, you've probably seen the King of Pops vendor with the little popsicle cart stand. Fun fact, selling popsicles for King of Pops is my career plan B if the journalism thing doesn't work out, because it does look like a lot of fun. I mean, who doesn't like popsicles, right? So that's what's going on. The criticism, if you want to call it that, or the question is as they grow, is the quality going to suffer? Because that's what tends to happen with small companies. The bigger they get at scale, the quality tends to go down. But Steve and his group over at King of Pops are real smart business people. If anybody's got a shot at doing this the right way, it's them. And it's a big deal. It's a homegrown company, King of Pops is, and it's very popular. People are always excited about it. Families are always excited to see them out and about. They're great supporters of our community. They're always there willing to do a fundraiser, and they'll kick back a portion of the proceeds to your PTAs or other charities and things like that. So King of Pops is coming to a grocery store near you if you are outside of the South, so be on the lookout.
And I gotta say, you know, with inflation, with an economic hardship that all of us are facing, it's nice to highlight businesses that are growing instead of closing. So shout out to King of Pops, and we wish them the best of luck.
Indeed. Good luck, guys.
All right, Dan, I want to change the tone a bit, talk about this important story that has really wrapped up the community involving the shooting of a Marta bus driver. 47-year-old Leroy Ramos lost his life earlier this month when he was shot while on the job. He was had operator for Marta. You know, we all show up to work hoping to come home, and unfortunately for Leroy, he did pass from this incident. Now, 2 people were arrested following the shooting, and a third person turned themselves in. All 3 of these suspects are juveniles, so police are not releasing their names, but we do know that they are being charged as adults.
They are, and presumably when they are indicted, the names will be available. That's typically what happens when suspects are charged as juveniles, who are juveniles are charged as adults. Homicide and murder is not something that happens very often in Decatur. We usually have, if we have any, 1 or 2 a year. So this is a very shocking and sad incident. This gentleman, I believe, had moved here from out of state, had only been on the job a few months. I don't know all the details, but apparently it was an argument about a bus fare, and because of the prevalence of guns, it quickly turned deadly. And it's just sad because there are so many lives that have been ruined over nothing, over essentially nothing, because there was a gun involved in the incident. There's been a GoFundMe started in support of the bus driver's family. I believe it's raised something like $15,000 towards a $55.5K goal to settle his funeral expenses and take care of his kids. The Transit Workers Union has also issued a call as well for some upgraded safety improvements. Yeah, safety is the big conversation that we're hearing out of Decatur right now, especially with the amount of people that rely on public transportation like Marta. Our Atlanta News First reporter Yasmina Alston takes a look at some of the changes that people are asking for.
That he came to work and didn't make it home.
And now the push for changes to protect bus drivers on the job after Leroy Ramos was shot and killed during a dispute on the sidewalk over a $2.50 fare at the Decatur station. It's tragedies like this that keep the Amalgamated Transit Union working for improvements.
People say it should be a safe environment. You should be able to come to work each day and be able to go home. But of course, you do have those incidents where individuals do become upset. They don't like the policies.
ATU President Britt Dunham says the union wants to see several changes from Marta in response to Ramos's death, including more transit police presence and harsher penalties when it comes to assaults against their employees.
We would love to have barriers. That will be not necessarily from the public, but it will be from the public. If you have a situation, we wouldn't have to worry about de-escalation.
In a statement in part, Marta says they have a strict de-escalation policy designed to protect operators from violence that includes not engaging with customers beyond the scope of their position as bus operator and leaving enforcement of rules to Marta police. Meanwhile, Ramos' family is grieving the loss of the 47-year-old who was a husband and had just moved to Atlanta from New York.
He was a great husband. He was a great man. He just wanted to be a provider, come home.
Yasmina Alston, Atlanta News First.
Yeah, he just wanted to go to work, provide for his family like all of us, and go home. And I think we can all relate to that sinking feeling. And that's where the public safety conversation is so important to be had, especially out in Decatur. So we're going to continue to follow that story on Atlanta News First, as well as Decaturish.com. I know you folks will stay on top of this.
Absolutely.
Wishing the family, again, healing, an unimaginable tragedy that they are now reeling from.
Indeed.
I want to talk about this next story involving the Decatur homeless shelter, another important community resource for DeKalb County, now struggling to reopen after Hurricane Helene.
So Hurricane Helene continues to be impact Georgians. There's some hurricane relief bills that are being discussed in the legislative session, and the Hagar House is owned and operated by Decatur Cooperative Ministries. It's a unique facility. It takes in homeless families, so families with minor children. It's got 5 rooms. It's got 30 beds. It's got a kitchen. And what happened when Hurricane Helene hit, a tree punctured the roof, and it caused extensive flood damage throughout the building. So they're estimating it's going to take about $150,000 worth of restoration work to reopen. They've started a fundraiser. I think they've raised about $54,000 towards the $150,000 goal. And as of right now, the building is unusable. If you've ever been at a street corner in DeKalb County and you've seen the unhoused people in our community, you know it is critically important for these shelters and access to these shelters to be in place. And since September, we haven't had an important link in that chain, in that safety net, if you will, for homeless and unhoused people living in our community. So they put the word out. They're trying to raise some additional funds to get their needs taken care of. And that's where that stands. We're going to continue to follow that story. A lot of people are interested in helping out. There's so much, if there's one constant theme of this show, it's that there's so much need out there. People need so much help this time of year to get basic things done, to take care of people, to bury people. And I think that we'll continue to see more of that as the year goes along, because people are struggling.
Yeah, and I'm glad you talked about community involvement. There's actually another story that Decatur Dish is following involving City Schools of Decatur are now considering opting out of a Homestead statewide tax exemption. Talk to me a little bit about that, because there's an opportunity for the public, the parents and families, to actually voice their input.
This is one of those times where I wish I had a give me a lifeline Zoe phone call like you do on the game shows, because Zoe Seiler, our assistant editor, has done a tremendous amount of work on the floating homestead tax exemption. It's a little complicated, and math is not my strong suit, y'all, so bear with me a little bit. But what happened is in November, voters approved what's called this floating homestead tax exemption. If you're a homeowner, you know that your property taxes are based on the assessed value of your home. The appraiser goes out, they say your home is worth X, Y, and Z, and it tends to go up in the market that we're in. Housing has only gone up, and it's driven up the cost of housing. So your tax bill is going to be based on whatever a percentage of that assessed value is. What this floating homestead exemption does, though, is it changes that, and instead of it being assessed based on the fair market value of your home going up, it's assessed based on what the current inflation rate is. So the idea behind it is to place some sort of inflationary cap. And what's driving this is the lack of housing affordability. All of these things are connected. Homelessness, housing affordability, they're all related, because even if you are a homeowner, you still are affected by increased taxes. If you are currently paying on your home, for example, your property taxes are paid via an escrow account. Well, if the assessment goes up to a point where it burns through your escrow, that means your monthly mortgage payment goes up every month to cover the cost of that. So it is an idea from the legislature to try to provide some additional relief to homeowners, but in true Georgia legislature fashion, it was never that simple. So they created an opt-out provision where cities have to decide, they only get one shot at this apparently, to decide whether they want to opt out of the floating homestead tax exemption by March, and they've got to hold 3 public hearings, which is what City Schools of Decatur is doing and a bunch of other districts are doing as well. It's not going to surprise anyone that most local governments are not keen to see their tax revenues restricted in that way. They argued that, and it's not a bad faith argument at all, that by shifting the burden, it's going to move more tax burden over to commercial and renters. People don't realize about apartments is that's taxed as commercial property. So rents are probably going to increase out of an initiative designed to help homeowners. What I find interesting about it, and I've lived in both worlds, I've rented here in Atlanta, and I own my home currently in Atlanta. We always treat taxes as sort of a perfunctory thing that happens every year. Your assessment goes up, you get charged more. That's the end of that. Nobody ever has a discussion of what's the money being spent on, how is it being spent, and if nothing else, this public hearing process offers us an opportunity to stop and really ask some hard questions of our local government about what are they spending our tax money on. Some of it is obviously needed, but with any government agency, if you start poking around, you can find some things that maybe aren't so mission critical. I don't think in the end most cities will allow this homestead tax exemption to be implemented. They're probably going to opt out unless in some cases cities already have a cap built into their charter. It's really complicated when you get down to individual cities. But I do think it does afford the public an opportunity to learn a little bit more about how their tax money is spent, and for the public officials to engage with them a bit more. And I think it's an important exercise to go through. I do think there is some academic benefit, if you will, of going through this exercise with the public. But that is, I'm not going to explain this as well as Zoe would explain it, but that in a nutshell is what's going on.
Mic drop. Very well
Boom.
explained. I think you would have made Zoe Seiler very proud.
I hope so.
These are the types of stories that we follow because we want you to have the information in your toolbox so that you can be more involved in your community. So that public hearing, I know Decatur Dish has put out a link to where you can get more information about that. And if this is something that you have strong opinions and thoughts and questions about, do get involved and do take advantage of those public hearing periods.
I would love it as a journalist if people would get more engaged with the budget and taxation process. I think that would be very, very healthy for our civic atmosphere if people had a better understanding of why taxes are the way they are and what's being paid for with their tax money.
Certainly. And Dan, the news never stops, certainly not for Atlanta News First and certainly not for Decatur-ish. So yeah, I know you guys are going to be staying on top of the latest news headlines that are coming out of Decatur and surrounding communities in DeKalb County. Where can people find you?
Decaturish.com. That's our main website. Go check it out. We post news there every day. If you want to catch our daily email, go to locallysourcednews.com and sign up for that. And also, if you want to catch episodes of this show, which airs every week at 12:30 p.m. right here on Atlanta News First Plus, go ahead and download the Atlanta News First Plus app. You can download it on your smartphone or your streaming devices.
And just want to put that website up for all of you at atlantanewsfirst.com and Decatur-ish. We have offered you a full link to where you can find more episodes, and of course a commercial pops up right as I say that in the app, on the website, on both of our websites actually. It's a fantastic resource to just kind of go through some of the community issues we've been following. With that, we will see you at 12:30 next Tuesday live right here on Atlanta News First Plus.
Have
Make
a
it
great week.
day.